A call from heaven.
Hello, you, the one reading these words, whether by chance or by purpose. Perhaps you came across this article while aimlessly scrolling through the digital soul stops of the internet, or simply because of an unexplainable tug in your heart, a soft knock, an unnamed ache that you can't quite define, only knowing that it's different. But please, stay here a little longer. Don't scroll past. Don't turn off the video. Don't skip ahead, for it may be that in this very moment, through these words, heaven is speaking to you. I do not say this as a prophet. I am but a recorder, a pen trembling under the eternal light, the light that we at Eternal Light Channel call you to step into every day. I don't know who you are, but I understand that feeling. The sensation of being separate, like a crack in a glass window, like Joseph thrown into a pit, like David wandering in the fields as King Saul sought his life, like Jeremiah weeping alone in the ruins of a city. That is the feeling of the chosen one. And that choice, dear one, is never easy. Because God does not choose the strong to wield power. He chooses the broken to bear witness to the glory of regeneration. If you find yourself constantly tested, misunderstood, hurt by things you didn't cause, then I implore you to stay until the end of this article. Because it is very likely that you are living part of the journey that God had set aside for you before you were born. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart to be a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah 1 verse 5. These words were not only meant for Jeremiah, but also serve as a subtle hint for the souls being awakened in the dark night of this world. I believe there are people who carry a sacred silence within them, like Esther, who had to hide her true identity in a world that couldn't understand her. There are people like Moses, raised in the Egyptian palace, but whose heart turned towards an oppressed people. There are those like Mary, the young woman who seemed ordinary, but was chosen by God to bear the Savior. They didn't know why they were chosen. They were afraid, but they said yes. And that yes, amidst the panic of the flesh, opened the door to eternal light. The world today may call you strange, weak, or delusional. But perhaps as Jesus said, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated 15 verse 18. You are not lost. You are walking a path that only a few dare to tread, and that is a sign that you do not belong to this world. Here at Eternal Light, we do not promise that this path will be easy. We only promise that it will be real, and it leads to life. And if there is anything that makes me, a soul filled with doubt and skepticism, still kneel every night, it is because I believe that there is a God who watches over every unheard sigh. He sees you, He is waiting for you, and He is never late. Every trial you are going through is not a punishment, but an alchemical process to make you the person He has destined you to be. Stay until the end of the video. Don't leave. For light often comes at the last moment. And sometimes a line, a quiet voice, a sincere sharing from a small YouTube channel named Eternal Light could very well be the whisper of heaven. If these words have touched something in you, leave a sign, comment, share, or simply offer a prayer. Let's hold on to this light together, because you are not alone. You are the chosen one. Chapter 1. The Trial, the Fiery Furnace of the Chosen One. I once believed that trials were random, that people were merely victims of a blind order, cast into the world like lonely insects, struggling between the screeching sounds of destiny. But then, when my steps led me to the deepest darkness, where there were no voices echoing except the faint whispers of faith, I began to understand that no pain is meaningless to God. There is no night He does not see, and those He loves, He allows to go through fire, not to destroy them, but to refine them, like a jeweler patiently sitting by the furnace, watching intently until the reflection of his own face appears in the pure gold. So you, the one reading these words, if you find yourself swept into the vortex of loss, betrayal, or depression to the point where it cannot be named, please do not fear. You are not forsaken. On the contrary, you may be in the very refining furnace that the Bible speaks of in 1 Peter 1 verse 7. Your faith of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire. God is not exposing you to the storm to prove something to the world. He is placing you in it to break apart the old, fragile shell so that you rise up as a new person, resilient, shining brightly, and no longer fearing the darkness. Think of Joseph, the young man carrying dreams given from above, only to be sold by his own brothers like a discarded commodity. A dreaming child becomes a slave becomes a prisoner is forgotten. And then, like a wind blowing through the Egyptian prison, God turns history upside down, and Joseph becomes the one who holds the bread for a world in hunger. The trial did not kill him, it shaped him. And if God did this with Joseph, he is doing the same with you in his own way, in the quietness that you cannot measure. I used to sit in the night, asking why the pain lasted so long, why the silence of God seemed as deep as an abyss. But in those moments of despair, I began to hear something, not an answer, but a presence, no explanation, but a hand, no escape, but endurance. And I suddenly realized, trials are not obstacles, but gateways. No one enters into the deeper things of God without first being stripped down to the core. There are young people who lose their jobs when they thought they were secure. There are souls who thought they had grasped love only to be betrayed. There are those who carry light within them, only to be called eccentric and pushed to the margins by the world. They are confused, depressed, broken. But it is from those broken pieces that God builds a new altar. It is from the weakest place that he sows a seed for a new calling. Just as Moses, from an exiled prince, became the one to face the Red Sea with a staff and faith. I know you are tired. You ask, if I am the chosen one, why is my life falling apart like this? But dear one, do not confuse misery with rejection. God has not rejected you. He is recreating you. In the darkness, in the pain, in every tear you swallow alone, he is with you. And in that fire, your faith, like gold, is being purified. Don't give up. Don't turn off the light. For it is in this refining furnace that heaven is touching you, and you are becoming something you never imagined. God does not choose anyone without making them pass through fire, but he also never leaves them alone in it. And the light, that eternal light, is waiting for you at the end of the journey. Chapter 2, Obedience, the key that unlocks the door to purpose. There is an invisible form of crisis that no one can clearly see. It is when a person knows what is right, but hesitates to act. I have fallen into this state, like a prisoner within my own will, where the call of God does not sound like thunder, but like a gentle knock, soft yet unceasing. And strangely enough, it is in these smallest of calls that the great destiny is placed. It is not the strong, nor the wise, but the obedient who are truly used by God to change history. You might doubt, as I once did, that obedience is a form of submission, the death of freedom. But now I understand. Obedience to God does not kill freedom, it frees it. For true freedom is not doing what we wish, but trusting enough to let go of what we do not understand and walking down a path that may be foggy, simply because we know the hand guiding us is that of one who never makes mistakes. Look at Abraham, a man living in a polytheistic world, hearing a call from a God he had never seen, and he went. No map, no plan. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Hebrews 11:8. That sentence moves me deeply, not because of Abraham's greatness, but because of the foolishness of the faith he placed in an unclear promise. But it was this, the foolishness in the eyes of man, that made him the father of a nation, a symbol for all souls who are lost yet dare to walk. And who is greater than Jesus? He who could have escaped pain, who could have called the heavenly armies to destroy every enemy. But he obeyed unto death, even the shameful death on the cross. And then what happened? He was given the name above all names. While the world seeks power, the Son of God sought obedience. While we struggle to control, he bowed his head and opened the gates of heaven to all mankind. His obedience was the gateway to eternal life. I once met a young man. He refused a job opportunity abroad because he felt an unusual sense that God wanted him to stay. There was no logical reasoning. His family opposed, his friends mocked. But he stayed, and a year later, from the very place he chose to remain, a humanitarian organization sprang up, and he became an agent of healing for hundreds of addicts. It was this illogical obedience that opened a door that, had he chosen reason, he would never have walked through. I tremble when I think of the times I did not obey, the times I clearly felt God calling me to say a word, go a direction, or let go of something. But I remained silent, not because I was evil, but because I was afraid. And the cost of disobedience is not punishment. It is losing the moment of grace, missing a divine rhythm that I will never get back. God will forgive, but the moment does not always return. The door remains open, but the ship has sailed. You are reading these words not by chance. Perhaps even now, God is knocking on your heart, not to demand, but to invite, not to impose, but to guide. You can choose to obey or not. But remember, the chosen souls are not those who understand everything, but those who dare to believe, dare to walk, dare to remain silent in the darkness, simply because they know that God is waiting on the other side. And if you still hesitate, stay with the Eternal Light channel. For here, we do not give you answers. We walk with you to where the light begins to rise. And sometimes just one more step of obedience, the miracle will happen. Chapter 3, Purse Strength in Waiting. I once dreamed of a door. This door had no handle, no hinges. It stood there in the middle of an endless hallway where time stretched out like the breath of an ancient serpent. Every time I approached, it seemed to retreat further, and I waited. Not because I believed the door would open, but because I had nowhere else to go. Waiting, for many people, is a waste. But in the journey of the chosen, waiting is the way God uses to refine the soul to its core. Not in action, but in silence and delay. The divine purpose is hidden like an instrumental song that plays in the heart of darkness. Job is an example, a man stripped of everything deemed worth living for. His children died, his wealth vanished, his body deteriorated, his friends scorned him, and worse, God was silent. In that void where there were no signs of hope, Job did not revolt. He didn't understand, but he didn't leave. This is perseverance that transcends reason, a raw faith, not asking for reward, not asking for reasons. And it was this silent, unresisting endurance that made Job a model for every soul crushed under the hand of time. Then look at David, anointed king while still a boy, but the throne was far, far away. Before the throne was a cave, the pursuit of Saul, years of hiding like a cursed man. God had chosen David, but he did not immediately place him on the throne. Instead, he allowed him to endure nearly 2 decades of waiting. Not because God changed his mind, but because David needed to be refined in silence. For the throne is not for the hasty. It is for those who know how to wait and keep their hearts from complaining. I think, perhaps, perseverance is the hardest of all virtues. This world loves speed. People want to pray today and have a miracle tomorrow. They demand answers immediately. But God works in the frequency of eternity, where a day is like 1,000 years. And so while we knock on the door like children begging for presents, he patiently molds us from the inside, not to give us the gift, but to ensure that when the time comes, we are strong enough to carry it without being crushed by it. I have seen people lose everything, their job, their love, their family, their reputation. And I asked, Lord, where are you? There was no answer, only silence. But then 5 years, 10 years later, those broken fragments became tools for something greater. The woman who lost her child became a counselor for mothers battling depression. The man who was betrayed established a marriage recovery center. It was the waiting in pain, without giving up, that became the miracle. So I ask you, honestly, as one who has been crushed by delayed hope, what are you waiting for? A job, a relationship, a healing, or a word from God? And if you find him silent, don't be quick to assume he is absent. Sometimes he is working the deepest within your soul, not with thunderous voices, but with the quiet of an invisible hand rewriting your destiny. I do not write this as one who has reached the destination. I am still waiting. But now I understand. Waiting is not in vain. It is the quiet furnace that forges a strength you didn't know you needed. Just as gold does not shine brightly in the hands of the miner, but only after enduring the scorching heat of the fire. And if tonight you still find yourself in the land where no promises have been fulfilled, persevere. For it is this perseverance that proves you are chosen. Chapter 4, The Real Story, Tyler Perry's Journey of Obedience. There are souls born as if cursed from the very beginning. No need for hell, for their childhood alone is enough to burn away all desire to live. Tyler Perry is one such soul, a poor black boy from New Orleans, growing up amid screams and untold beatings from a father who should have been the safest refuge. The mother, with trembling hands and eyes that always avoided his gaze, could only utter one thing, a phrase that would later be the only anchor for his soul. "Pray, my child, no matter what happens." A simple phrase, yet it seemed like the key God had hidden deep in the darkest corner of a person's life. I often think of Job when I hear this story, not because of the similar pain, but because of the silent injustice both of them experienced, and yet they did not blame God. Job lost everything, but still said, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Tyler Perry, in his darkest moment, did not turn to death as a means of escape, but instead to a pen and whispered prayers with God, as if he were writing his own personal Bible through his wounds. When he poured all his money into his first play in 1992, he didn't expect fame. He only heard a quiet urging, "Tell your story, with truth, with faith, and with forgiveness." But that truth was not welcomed. That forgiveness was not embraced. He failed. No one came. He lost everything. And like David, anointed king but forced to hide in caves, Tyler became a homeless man living in his car, carrying a promise but not yet seeing its fulfillment. I see a divine paradox in this. Why would God call someone and then allow them to be crushed? But that is the secret of the kingdom, where obedience does not lead to immediate reward, but to soul transformation. 6 years passed like a rainless desert, but then, in 1998, just as he was about to give up, a door opened unexpectedly, one night of a sold-out show, and from there, the waves began to rise. Not because he changed his writing, but because God was ready to reveal his faithfulness at the exact time he had ordained. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in the meticulousness of a God who is writing the script of human life through events that seem meaningless. Tyler Perry, who once suffered abuse and humiliation, is now a storyteller for millions of hurting people. His works, like Medea and Diary of a Mad Black Woman, are not just for entertainment, but for healing, reminding us that those who seem abandoned are actually chosen to carry the light. When he built Tyler Perry Studios on the grounds of a former military base, that wasn't about boasting about success. It was a spiritual declaration. Where people were once trained to fight, now it will be a place of healing and recounting the victories of the soul. It's like the image of Joseph, who was sold into slavery and later became the right-hand man of the king of Egypt. Both understood God's calling doesn't come to praise the individual, but to save many. I thought about this long after reading his words. I never wrote to be famous. I wrote because God gave me a voice, and I use it to bring hope to those who are as hopeless as I once was. Not all of us will succeed as he did, but all of us, if we choose obedience amid brokenness, are walking the same path, where God is not looking for perfection, but for hearts willing to endure so he can reveal his glory. So if you are in a dark season, if you've heard God's promise, but everything around you seems to betray that promise, remember this. Tyler Perry once lived in his car. David once ran for his life. Joseph was once forgotten, but all of them chose one thing, not to turn away from God. And that is the beginning of the miracle. Lesson conclusion: becoming the chosen one. Life, in its darkest and most profound moments, always leaves an indelible mark on each person. Perhaps you have often seen a figure gradually disappearing into the mist, a figure unaware of where they are headed or whether they can continue the journey. But isn't it precisely in those moments when everything becomes unclear and chaotic that God is closest, holding your hand without you realizing it? Trials, obedience, and perseverance. 3 things that deep down in our souls, we all know are the necessary steps to becoming the chosen one. Not because we are strong, but because we are willing to let God work within us. Think of Job, who, despite everything that seemed capable of killing his soul, became a symbol of unwavering faith. Job did not give up despite all those trials, because he understood that suffering was not a sign of abandonment, but a means for God to refine him into a better person. Each trial Job faced was a layer of steel forged to create an unbreakable faith. Similarly, we often think that trials are a punishment, but the trials are actually a purification. where God cleanses us of weaknesses and sins, leaving behind only strong, resilient faith. David, when anointed king, did not immediately sit on the throne, but had to live on the run, in constant threat of death. But it was during those years that he not only learned obedience, but also perseverance, realizing that God was training him for a greater mission. God does not come to save us from every pain immediately, but to help us overcome challenges through which he will make us stronger, just as David, from a shepherd boy, became the mighty king of Israel. Obedience. Not obedience as a command, but obedience because you recognize that you belong to him. When someone obeys God, they are not simply following a soulless order. They are carrying out an absolute trust in his guidance. Those who do not obey, who do not open their hearts to listen and follow God's instructions, will miss the moment he opens the door. God's teachings are not burdensome. They are the way forward. Do you remember the story of Abraham when he obeyed God to leave his home and go to the place he showed him? It wasn't an easy act, but it was through that obedience that God made him the father of a great nation. God can give us strength in our weakest moments. When you feel like you can't continue, when the trials seem to make you fall, that is the moment you need to persevere the most. And this perseverance does not come from your own strength, but from true faith in God. Revelation 2:10 reminds us, "Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life." It is in perseverance and faith, even when the storms are the fiercest, that we prove the faithfulness and steadfastness of a soul belonging to God. So if you are in the midst of trials, if you feel like you are standing in the midst of fog between difficulties with no way out, I urge you to pray, examine your heart, and ask God to give you the strength to obey him, no matter how great the trial. God will not abandon you, no matter how you may feel. The rough roads, the dark trials are steps that lead you closer to him. Do not be afraid to stand firm in the storm. Do not turn away when life seems to offer no hope, for it is in those difficult moments that God will complete the work he has started in you. Finally, I want to remind you that you are not chosen because you are strong, but because you are willing to let God work within you. It is in weakness, in moments when it seems impossible to continue, that he will work. Never give up, never turn back. Stand firm, for what God has started, he will finish. Thank you for journeying with me on this path. I wish you health and peace and faith. I look forward to seeing you in the next videos of Eternal Light, where the light of God always shines and his teachings forever illuminate the way.